What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Real Estate Investing School podcast. This is a real deal episode, and it's extra real today because this is episode number 100, and I have your favorite host joining me today, Joe Jensen. What's up, Joe?
What's up, dude? 100 episodes. That's crazy. I can't believe we're already here.
I know. It's if you remember when we started this thing, like the idea was, hey, if we're going to do this, we're committing to the long haul. And no offense to anyone out there that started a podcast and stopped it, but that was our whole mission, was we are not going to be another one of those people that says we're going to do this and then we do it and we're excited in the moment and we're momentary motivated, but not daily disciplined. And then it just phases out. So, dude, props to you for being on top of it. Like, we started this thing out too, where it was like you and I co-hosting it. And you quickly realized that, like, I was holding you back. So.
I was like, this is never going to happen. Trying to schedule 3 people at a time, especially trying to schedule with you.
Well, dude, I'm just happy that I can still be involved, and you do a way better job as a host, and so I love it. The people love it, and I'm excited for this one because we started out. I think the first episode we didn't have any guests. It was just you and I jamming, introducing this thing, and here we are. Episode 100. So proud of like you, and it's cool to see Real Estate Investing School and where it's came and all the good stuff that we get to jam on today. But like ultimately, here we are, and we wanted to make this one special and just kind of bring it back to where you and I get to have a catch up conversation and jam today.
Yeah, dude, it's like run it back. I'm trying to think. I know we're at 100 episodes. I'm trying to think of like how many months, or like, has it been a year? Has it been like, I'm like, how long has it actually been time wise?
I don't even know. I don't even know. I think it's been a year, over a year. I don't know. Because we introduced these real deal episodes, like, I don't know, halfway through. Yeah. Which let us know. Like, if you guys enjoy these real deal episodes, let us know in the comments. Send us a DM at Real Estate Investing School. And just curious, do you guys like the longer shows better, where we bring on a guest and dive into it, or do you like the short, quick, where we just bring on a guest to dive into the ins and outs of one deal? We'd love to kind of hear your feedback. Or do you like both of them? And then let us know, do you like Joe better, or do you like me better?
Well, let's do a poll. If you could pick a host, is it Joe or Brody? So I'm looking at I just pulled up our podcast, and it looks like it was July of 2022. So
wow.
Over a year.
Over a year.
So let's catch up. What has changed? Let's run it back. What's happened in the past year? We should have listened to that before we got on here and seen where things were at. But dude, we've both been doing some cool stuff. You just you just got a new place in Maui. And I just got a new place in Southern Utah. And so we both are just moving like this past month, which is exciting. So I'm excited to dive into those deals specifically. And hear
which
about
is funny
those.
Because we kind of switched spots, because not when we first met, but like 5 years ago, you were living in Hawaii and I was living in Southern Utah.
Yeah. And then as soon as I moved back here, you left, to keep some distance there. But yeah, man, no, it's funny how it's kind of swapped. And then I'm still making my plans to get back to Hawaii eventually, but
yes. Well,
great,
yeah, dude.
man.
No, you did a cool deal, and we actually just came back too from BP Con, Bigger Pockets conference in Florida. We shared an Airbnb. It was awesome, with some other people from the team, as well as just some other investors, and man, it was fun because we got to catch up, and we dove specifically into the deal that you just did, because I've had a ton of questions around like subject to financing, and you guys have probably heard all the craze and seen all of Pace Morby's ads around it and whatnot. And so that was cool because you just did that. And like, obviously we're big at Real Estate Investing School on like, we want to actually try out all these different types of deals and all the things that we hear about, so that we can, coach our students the best way possible. But
100%.
Let's dive into that one first, man, because you actually live there now.
Yeah, I'm living in it. I'm actually in it right now as a recording. I'm in my new office in my new house that I bought doing a subject to. And it's funny that you mentioned, like, that was honestly a big motivation to pull the trigger on this one, was I wanted to go through the experience. I hate teaching things in theory. It's like I know a lot about real estate that I haven't actually done, but I love to teach the stuff that I've actually done myself. It's way
Yeah.
different. And when I first started getting into the game, that was one of my kind of my strategies. Is like I want to try short-term rental, mid-term rental, long-term. I want to try, land development stuff from scratch. I want to do mobile home parks. I want to do condos. I want to do long hold. Like I just wanted to get my hands in everything. And I've done, everything I just listed over the past, couple of years since I've been going full time. But one
So
thing
I
I
have a
hadn't
question.
done is
I have
the
a question
subject
about
too.
that.
Yeah.
I have a question about that because a lot of people will say like, "Hey, just find the one method, stick to it." It's kind of like the one thing, right? What's the one thing, one
Hmm.
strategy? Don't get distracted by all these other things. What's your answer to that? Like, are you spread out too thin because you try and do all these other different things? And what advice do you have to people that are maybe kind of going through like, which strategy should I use and which one should I focus on?
Yeah, no, I think that really is the ultimate goal. I think there's a lot of power in that. If you can really, especially depending on what your goals are though, and your time frame. I always say whenever you're making any goals, it's like what are your resources, what's your time frame, and what's your goal? And you triangulate those three and that'll tell you your strategy. Um, but
Say that
but so I
again.
think so you
Say that
take your
again.
time frame, are you trying to do something in 1 year? Do you have 10 years? What's your actual goal? Are you trying to like build it, $10,000 a month cash flow could be your goal or whatever. Or maybe it's just build wealth, to retire on. What's your goal? What's your time frame to hit that goal? And then what are your resources? What kind of capital you have, what kind of credit do you have, what kind of connections do you have? But if you triangulate your goal, your time, and your resources, that'll determine your strategy. And it'll literally, you'll see if you broke that down. And I'll have my students do this. I'll have them write those things down and they'll start stripping away. It's like, oh, well, STRs won't work with my strategy, or that I got to go recycle my money because I don't have that much capital, so I'm gonna do like some sort of burr, or like it just starts deciding for you your approach based on those three kind of requirements.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good. And we've actually like looked into the past about building like a calculator for that or doing like a
Hmm.
survey where people could go through and they could like, I have this much time or I have this much like energy or I have these are my resources. And based on all of their answers, it spits out like, hey, these are the strategies you should
That
focus
would be
on.
awesome, actually.
That'd be cool, huh?
I,
Like the thing is we do it, right? Like as coaches, we do it
yeah,
inside real estate investment school, but like we do it manually. It's like we're
right.
asking all the questions with the whole intent of like, okay, we're narrowing this down to where this strategy, if you focus on it, is gonna be your best chance of success according to like where you want to get and where you want to end up and according to what you have to work with right now. So I
Hmm.
love that you said those three things.
Yeah, and then once you kind of figure that out, you can kind of dive into some of your preferences and your strengths and stuff, right? Because it's okay, well, this is what I have to do. But now within that realm, what are my strengths? What am I good at? And what do I prefer? What do I like? And that was my question with doing all these different things. I knew my goal was long hold cash flow, build that cash flow portfolio, was kind of my focus. But man, there's so many different ways to do it. I was like, well, what do I like? Do I like short term? Do I not like short term? Do I like land deals? I just wanted to try a bunch of stuff to see what I liked. And if you've run across one that you love and you're good at it, like come back to your original question, like, dude, I would say sprint with that. If you're enjoying it and it's working, like just go all in and just go hard. But until
Yeah.
you're there, it doesn't hurt to experiment with a lot of stuff. But again, my approach was a little different because of the school. I wanted to be able to coach everything, even if I didn't really care and even if it wasn't a big impact on my personal goals. It's like I
Yeah.
wanted to try everything, so if any student needed help with anything, I'd be like, oh, I've done that, I have personal experience in that. So I
Yeah.
think that kind of warped my personal perspective a little more than the average
Right.
investor.
No, which is super cool, and it almost takes on too, like, a lot of people and this is what fires me up, like, I know it fires you up, but, like, I can't invest in real estate because of XYZ. Like, immediately, I wanna be able to be like, "Well, guess what? I did this when I didn't have XYZ, and this is how I did it," right? And,
Hmm.
or if I haven't done that, then it's like, "Okay, I'm gonna not use XYZ, and I'm gonna go and do this, and I'm gonna go take it down." And it could be, I don't have any credit, I don't have money for a down payment, I don't have any experience, I don't, know where to find deals, I don't, like, so many excuses, really. Let's just call it what it is. There's a way around it, and there's a strategy that works, like, despite your situation. And
100%.
I love how you said, like what are your strengths, right? And, like, leaning into, hey, this strategy favors my strength as a human being, which also is as a real estate investor. And here's how I can lean into those strategies and those strengths. And then the ones that it's my weakness, I'm finding maybe somebody else, or I'm, finding a strategy that doesn't require that, or somebody else, it's their strength and it's my weakness. And so, we were able to figure out a win-win scenario and go take down deals.
Dude, totally. And what was interesting is, like, everybody's situation is different, like you said, and there's always something that can work for some situation. The way you might approach one because of your strengths and resources would be different than me, but we can both tackle this, even the same project, we just tackle it differently, but maybe
Yeah.
tackle different projects. But it's funny, the limiting factors we have. That's actually how I got into this sub two deal, that home I'm living in. Is I wasn't even looking at doing sub two, but my brother, he had just I think I mentioned this on a podcast, but he had just recently got divorced, and he was out of work, and his credit was shot from, like, the divorce and other things, and, like, it was just, like, kind of a frustrating time in his life. And I was like, dude, you should go buy real estate, right? Because that's what I do. And he's like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, I can't. Like, it wasn't even on the radar for him as a reality. And he just wanted a place to live. And he was, moved back in with my folks for a while, and he's, like, got kids, and he's a full grown man. He's my older brother. And he's just like, I can't even buy a place. Like, there's no way for me to even own my own home. Maybe in 10 years from now, who knows? And I was like, no, dude, let's get you one right away. And it was funny because this wholesale deal came across my desk, and it was this subject too. And it was like a condo, like 5 minutes from his kids, where his kids were staying. He's like, and he had all these criteria. I need it like under $1,000 a month. I need it within this boundary of my kids. And it was just like, he gave me this, like, impossible criteria. I was like, geez Louise. And then, like, I swear it was that month it came across my table. I was like, bro, let's get this deal. And being a subject to, he just bought it subject to the existing loan remaining in place, meaning his credit didn't matter, his job didn't matter, his income didn't matter, like, all his credit didn't matter, and all those things that we felt like stopped him didn't matter. And then it was in the radius he needed to be in the city he wanted to be in, and it was even in his price point, which was crazy.
Wow.
And after seeing him do that, I was like, wait a second. Like, I wanted to get a deal, but I just done all this tax write-off. So my accountants were like, dude, you're not going to qualify until you do your taxes next season for, like, a larger home. And I was like, dang it, dude, I have to wait, And then after doing that, I'm like, I don't have to wait. I'll just go
Yeah.
find a sub two deal. If he can do it, I can do it. I'll just do a bigger one. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what I did. It happened, like, so quick. It's crazy when you decide you want something, like, how
Yeah.
fast it can happen.
Yeah. Dude, I love that, man. I love that. And I want to dive into this, and this is, it's so easy to spend so much time on, like, the mindset component of it. And I'm sure we'll loop back around and talk more about it, but just, there's a reason for that. It's like, that's the powerful stuff, like, the bigger the
Mm-hmm.
how, the easier the why. And, like, the how part is, like, figuring those things out. Like, that's where most people are, or sorry, like the how part can get figured out, right? It's the why. Like, you have to have that why that's so big and so strong. And it's like you said, once you have that mentality of, like, nothing's getting in my way, then all of a sudden the how, it just happens, because that's the non-negotiable. Like, you're going to figure out a way if you want it bad enough. It's just as simple as that. And yeah, so I want to dive into this
Yeah.
deal that you're talking about. And because I know a lot of people are sitting here, like I was, like, okay, like, I need to understand subject to a little bit more because it's talked about all the time. But give us kind of like a 30,000 foot. What's the deal? What did you put down on it? What is a subject to? What does it kind of look like in general?
Yeah, so for this specific deal, I bought a home in Washington, Utah. It's basically St. George, Utah, southern Utah. And I mean, the big idea with subject to is you're buying a property subject to the existing mortgage staying in place. And so the first question everybody goes, oh, so then you put the loan in your name, right? I was literally just messaging an agent today, and I was asking him about what's their existing loan? What are the terms on it? I'm interested in buying it subject to. And he's like, cool, I'll see if it's assumable. And I'm like, no, it doesn't need to be assumable. So for anybody listening, to assume a loan, like FHA loans and VA loans are assumable, meaning you assume the loan into your name. You actually take the loan, switch the seller off of the loan, and put your name on the loan. They're really cool because you can keep the existing loan terms. So right now, interest rates are 8 or 9%, but 3 years ago, they were like 4 or 3%. And so anybody that can take over an existing loan at that rate, that's really awesome.
If
Now,
you're, do you have to qualify if you're assuming that loan?
that's the thing. You have to qualify if you're assuming the loan. So you have to qualify just like if you were buying it fresh. You have to have the income, you have to show the work history, the reserves, like all the whole 9 yards, the credit score, like everything that you would qualify normally. The bank can still look at and decide if they're going to let you assume the loan, just like a normal qualification. Which, for my brother's situation, and even for mine, because I wrote everything off in taxes, I wasn't going to qualify for more than like 200,000 for a primary. And I'm like, well, that's not going to work. You can't find a mobile home for 200,000 in Southern Utah, And so even if I could assume it, it wouldn't be any good because it wouldn't help me with my goals. For someone else, that'd be cool. So anyway, the subject to, you literally leave the existing loan in place as is with the seller's name on it, but you put the home in your name or your LLC or a trust, and we can get into why you choose those, but you actually transfer title. The deed will actually go to you instead of being in the seller's name. So you own the home, it's in your name, and there's just a bank note on it, just like there would be. It's just your name's not on the bank note.
Cool. So just to break that down, like there's a difference in who's on the loan and who's on the deed or who's on the title. And like my wife and I'll do this a lot of times, like where we'll switch off, who's getting the loan, just to keep like, debt to income ratio and different things. So we'll switch off and it's great. Like she has an income so she can qualify for stuff now, which is awesome. But a lot of times we'll both be on title, like we'll jointly hold the title, but I'm not on the loan whatsoever, or she's not on the loan whatsoever. And so you don't have to have your credit ran. You don't have to, have that show up if someone ran your credit, etc. So, yeah, I think that's smart to clarify. There's two different things that way. And so what you're saying is in the subject to, they're keeping the loan portion under their name. And instead what's happening is the title, which is let's be honest, the loan's the debt, the title's the equity, right? The titles is who actually owns it, owns the house, who has the say, who sells it, who whatever, right? So you don't want to be on the debt, you do want to be on the title. And so I know that's a big misconception with subject to, is a lot of people like, oh, like I don't own the house. And it's like, no, you own the house just like you would if you were going out and buying it. The difference is you're just not on the debt.
100%. And that's the interesting thing. So there's this phrase I grew up, and we all grew up like, oh, the debt is the devil and it's the worst thing in the world and stuff. And we've learned that you can leverage debt for assets, which is powerful. But you ever heard this phrase like, well, I don't own the house, the bank owns the house, right? Like the farm's owned by the bank, right? And you've heard that phrase before. And I used to truly believe that. I literally, get this, guys, I probably told this story before, but I literally thought the bank owned the home. I didn't know that I owned the home. So when I paid off my mortgage, originally, I thought my first home as my life goal was to pay it off. I didn't know I should leverage that money and could have been a lot better off right now. But I paid off the home. I messaged the bank. I'm like, cool, can you send me the title with my name on it now? And they're like, what the hell are you talking about? The title's always been in your name. We can send you a statement that the loan's paid off, but the deed's always been in your name. I literally didn't know that. I was like, wait, I thought they owned it and then I get it once it's paid off. And that's not the case. You own the home regardless of what debt's against it, whether it's a lien from a contractor, it's a lien from the mortgage company who gave you money to buy it, it's a lien from whatever, the city, because they have to put some utilities through it, whatever. There's lots of liens that can go against properties, but who actually owns it is the person that's in control of it and can decide when to sell it or to improve it or to flip it or to live in it. Owning it is different than having a lien against it, which is all a mortgage is a lien against it because they let you borrow money.
Yeah. Okay. So the most important question that's on everyone's mind, just kidding. I don't know if it is or not, but why would somebody do this? Why would this person do that? And why would they stay on the loan and give up the deed?
So the best answer to that is if structured right, it's really, really, really safe and there's no reason not to. That's the fastest question answer to that. And people are like, well, why would you do that? It's like, well, why wouldn't you? Because if it's hard to sell your home because people, the buyers are coming in at an 8% interest rate, then it's like, that's really hard to sell your house fast. And so, especially if you're motivated to move fast, but even if you just want to get top dollar for it, I offered them $15,000 over it's a value. Like, so we didn't actually do a full on appraisal because we didn't have to, because we weren't getting a new loan, but we did have an appraisal, run the numbers and do comps. And I ran comps and we went through it all. And we said, okay, the home's worth, X amount. I think it was like 525 or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, 535, 525, I think, because I offered 15,000 over the appraisal value. Now, one, if the buyer is coming in to get a loan, they can't finance it for over appraisal value, right? They'd have to pay out cash for all that. And so it might be hard to sell a home over appraisal value if you're doing traditional financing. But for me, I was like, hey, if I'll pay an extra $15K, so you get something out of it if you just leave the loan on, because I couldn't pay down an interest rate using even with $15,000, I couldn't pay it down to 3.5%. And, which is what I got on this interest rate is 3.5%.
Yeah.
So for them, they were able to move fast. They were able to sell it to a buyer at above asking. So that was good for them.
But they weren't. So what did you guys negotiate? Or what did you talk about? So this is an important piece, right? Because how much they owe on their loan still is going to make a difference in how much money that they get, essentially, depending on however you work things out, right? But like if you agree to a purchase price of, 535 or whatever it was, 540, then they still have a loan on it, right? So how much are they being cashed out, right? How does all that work? Are there people that are more incentivized to do a subject to deal, aside from like, okay, it makes sense from you covered the fact that they can get above asking, right? And then they can sell it quicker, right? What are the other benefits?
Yeah, so I mean, that's the main benefit for the sellers, just they can sell it. You know what I mean? And then they can maybe get above asking if they're letting you use their loan terms, right? That's really the only benefits for them. Now, why they might be motivated to do it also is if they like these people were 3 months behind on their mortgage, they were going to be foreclosed on. They had all these liens on the property, and they just didn't have the money. They had actually done a forbearance where during COVID, they were like, hey, we can't pay our mortgage. And the bank said, like, okay, you don't have to pay for 6 months or whatever. And we can talk about what a forbearance is because that's another second lien on the home. And then they, which actually worked out in my favor, and I'll explain why. But then when the forbearance was over, they made one payment and then couldn't make the payments for another 3 months. And so they were just like, we got to get rid of this thing. You know what I mean? And I came in, I was like, dude, and you can close really, really fast with a subject too, because I don't have to qualify for a bank. I don't have to go sell my house. I don't have to go through any of the lending loops. I mean, you could close in a weekend. I mean, there's nothing holding you back. You just do the title work and you close. So it can be really fast, and it's a guaranteed close compared to if a seller's, buying contingent upon financing or something like that. The tricky thing for the buyer, the easiest ones to do is the ones with the least amount of equity, right? Because if they need to get cash out of their equity, because obviously they want to make whatever they do owe it, if they have $200,000 in equity, you got to come up with $200,000. If they have $20,000 in equity, you only need to come up with 20,000 or maybe 30 if you give them more than their equity. So the less equity in there, the easier it is for the buyer. But there's ways to do it. Some people will have the seller finance their equity and just take over the existing loan. And so there's always a way to kind of find some sort of hybrid deal where you start making payments to the bank for the existing loan, but you start making payments to the seller for that $100,000 of equity they need to be cashed out, and you don't have the cash, but you can start paying them until that's paid off.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so good. No, I'm glad you touched on that, just because it's like I think a lot of people just think like, why would they do that? Well, why would they do that? Why would they hold on to the loan? Why that doesn't make sense? And it's like you have to understand you're creating a win-win scenario, right, for
Mm-hmm.
somebody. And had you been in the opposite situation, you probably would have like gladly done the same thing. You know, you're behind on your payments. Like basically what these people are going to do is they're going to sell their house for less than what they owe. Right. So
Oh
it's like
yeah.
imagine selling your house. And a lot of times too, and this is like we met somebody this last weekend, and that's all he does is subject to stuff, and he's walking us through how he finds all of them, and he just goes on Zillow and he looks at homes that were sold in the past 2 years and that are listed for sale again. And his kind of like the idea behind it is the market was a lot higher about 2 years ago, a year, 2 years ago. And so like if anybody bought within that time frame and they're selling again now, there's a good chance their house is maybe worth a little bit less than what they initially
Mm-hmm.
bought it for. And so yeah, you get to come in and you get to be the hero, so to speak, because someone's going to sell their house and lose money from selling their house. Like they're going to have to pay money to get out of their loan. And you can come in and be like, hey, the good thing you have is a low interest rate. You didn't get prices right, but you have a low interest rate. And so you're willing to take advantage of that for you. They keep the loan. And yeah. So I love just like the psychology of understanding like, okay, this is a win-win scenario. This isn't like
100%.
you're pulling the wool over somebody's eyes really quick.
No, and in fact, it's super super transparent. And there's all these forms you have when you do a subject to correctly, and one of them is like a subject to disclosure form. You're like, there's like breaking down like everything. They know exactly what's going on. None of this is happening like kind of shady to take advantage of anybody. It's like they know more than a normal deal. I think what's going on, and like I
Yeah.
said, they're stoked on it because they didn't have to file foreclosure. They saved their credit. In fact, guess what? The loan's still in their name, being paid, which means their credit's going to continue to improve too. Like, and they don't even have to pay for it, right? And so it's actually saving their credit. It saved them their situation. If they had done a normal realtor and sold this through an agent at the appraisal value, they would have lost money. They would have had to come out of pocket to be able to sell their house. But because they
Yeah.
did it off market through me, they walked away with tens of thousands of dollars in their pocket and didn't have to file foreclosure. And I was stoked too, because like I got a house probably $1,500 less on my payment taking over their loan than if I had just went
Yeah.
and got a new loan in my name today.
Yeah.
For the same amount, for the same thing, same purchase price, it would have been an extra $1,500 a month just because interest rates are so much higher.
Yeah.
You
It's
know,
almost like paying for a buy down if you look at it that way,
that's how
but
I
like
looked
it's
at
not
it.
even an option to buy it down that low. So
Exactly.
amazing.
Yeah, so
What
it was super cool.
one of the questions I asked you was like, okay, well, does that mean that they have this property on their debt to income ratio for the next however long, and now they go to qualify for another property down the road, and they're like, oh, sorry, like you have this loan, we're not going to approve anything.
Mhm.
You want to tell
Yeah.
everybody the answer to that?
Yeah, so and then I also want to talk about why I said it was so safe for the seller. So one
Mhm.
thing is just like how you and we both own a lot of property, right? And the lenders, when they look at it, they don't go, "Oh, well, you owe Joe, you owe $2 or $3 million in mortgages, like you won't qualify for a loan." They go, "Well, are these mortgages serviced? Are these debts being serviced by someone other than you?" And normally you'd show a lease agreement showing that, hey, this renter is in there and they're paying $2,000 a month and the mortgage is only 15, so I'm good to go. Right. And so, but with this, that you can actually show them the inclusive trust deed. You can show them that the home was sold. If you're the seller, right, and you go to your lender after doing a subject to, you can just show, hey, the home was sold. This person has a promissory, agreement to pay the mortgage. There's all these contracts saying that they're going to pay the mortgage, and you use an escrow company to actually make the payments. So you have a document there you can show your lender, like, hey, all of these payments have been made through this other person, not through us. And here's the contract of them agreeing to do it. So it's even stronger than a rental agreement,
Mhm.
way stronger. And the
Yeah.
lender, and a lot of lenders don't know how this works because they're not used to it because it's not common. So you might have to educate your lender, but any lender that would take the time to look at it would go, oh, this is totally serviced. They'll at least count 75% of it the first year and 100% the next year. They might even count 100% the very first year. I asked this question to a panel of lenders at Bigger Pockets because I didn't want to just, assume I'm right and like, oh, hopefully lenders are cool with it. Since most lenders don't know how it works, I'd ask lenders and they were like, I don't know. I don't know. But at Bigger Pockets, we had all these experienced lenders on this panel. I asked them, like, how would you look at that for the seller on a subject to? And they were all, every single one, they're like, yeah, it's a service loan. We don't care. It's totally covered. Like it would,
That's
without
cool.
without hesitation. So anyway, it wouldn't be an issue at all for the seller, which is super, super cool.
Speaking of lenders, I think it's important for you to cover, like, so what do? They call their lender and say, hey, just so you know, like so and so is taking this over. Why would that be a bad idea? And then why is that also not an illegal thing to do if you don't notify them?
Yeah, so it's not illegal to sell your property. You could sell any property without informing anybody of any of the liens. You don't have to tell the seller, the buyer, the people that own the liens. You can just sell your property. That's your right, right? And so it's not illegal to do. There is something that most mortgages have called a due on sale clause, where they have the right, if they want to, that if a property is sold or changes ownership, they have the right to call the note due, which means to say, hey, you need to pay off the mortgage in full. They have that right. They don't have to do it, and so but they have the right to do it. So as long as the bank's happy, then they might not even call the note due. So the easiest thing to do with subject to is just don't even inform the bank. They don't need to know. You make sure the payments still go through. You make sure there's still insurance on the place, and you just don't even inform the bank at all. In fact, I have the seller sign a form saying they won't inform the lender of it so that they won't cause any issues, especially preemptively during the closing and stuff like that. So you don't need to tell the lender. It's not illegal. But if they do find out, they might call the note due. But it's very rare. And there's a couple ways to get around it, even if they did want to.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and I think it's important to understand too that this is, a lot of people don't understand the ins and outs of this. Like a lot of lenders, a lot of realtors, a lot of, like I hit you up today. I sent you a screenshot about like a subject to deal that I'm looking at right now, and like literally like his response was like, I don't know much about it, but like if you could explain it to me, like I'm open to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, what's your interest rate? And it's a 2.2 percent VA loan. So anyhow, just like it's people need educated from it, and once they understand it, just like anything, all of a sudden it's not as scary. Okay, you said you want to touch on
why it's
why
safe for
it's
them.
safe. Yes.
Yeah, and just the education thing, that's really true. And the thing that's unique about subject to is most people in the industry are not educated, not just the seller, but the lenders, the banks, the real estate agents. Like most people don't know how it works. And so the easiest thing to do when you don't know what something is to just back off and not touch it, right? If you're unaware, if you don't know something, it's easier just not to do it. So yeah, the best thing people can do is understand it, to be able to teach their agent about it, teach their lender about it, teach the seller about it, and then people can feel comfortable. But one reason it's super safe is you
I
can
think
do.
too,
Oh,
to
go on.
that point, I think one, if people want to know the ins and outs of it, they can come work with us and work with you as a coach. That's the best way to learn, right?
Yeah.
Specific deal by deal. Two is it's almost the exact same thing with investing. Like lenders,
yeah, with anything.
they don't know what a good deal is. Realtors, they don't know what a good deal is. And this isn't everybody. It's not everybody. It's not all of them, but it's 99.9% of them. So if you're taking advice from your realtor, from your lender, and they don't own properties or multiple rental properties, like that's your first red flag right there. It was like, no offense, Dad, if you're listening, but like that was my dad's advice. Like, hey, don't buy a second house. You already have one house. Like pay it off first and then go buy a second house. And it was just kind of like, well, how many houses do you have? How many rental properties do you have? And then I looked at, one of my mentors that had a lot of properties, and I'm just like, I want to take his advice. Right. So anyhow, same exact stuff.
100%. Yeah, I have a real estate agent that she doesn't know anything about investments. Every deal she sends me, oh, this one would be an awesome one, and it's like it's trash. But she's really good at her job at what she's an agent at. She's really getting the paperwork through, getting the sellers to sign, getting everything done. So I love her. I've bought multiple duplexes through her, even though she knows nothing about investing, but she knows about being an agent, which is what I need her to know.
Yeah.
And so it's, people know what they know, and they don't know what they don't know. Your dad was a genius in a lot of other ways, but not when it came to real estate.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I just closed on a property on Friday, and I did a lot of due diligence with it. Like I probably spent, 100+ hours on this thing, like figuring things out. And it's a commercial project. And but like, it was funny because every call that I had, like whether it be to like an engineer, whether it be to like one, I even talked to the mayor of the town, and like, it's just hilarious because not every single call, but most of them, they're
You
like
sure
trying to
you want to
talk
do
me out of it.
that?
Yeah. Like, I don't think like we actually need, like the mayor told me, we actually need like a mall. Like you should do a mall instead. And I'm just like there's 1,000 reasons why that would not work. Like, I'm sorry. I know you want
You
a
don't even
mall,
have
but
the population to justify a mall. That's why there's not one there, bud.
not even close. Anyhow. So just don't like realize that. And yeah, you got to go do it in spite of those critics out there.
Yeah, for sure. So one thing that's why it's really safe for a seller, okay, especially if you're cashing them out of their equity, you can do what you call a performance deed, and you can do this on any property. Anytime you sell a property, you can put a performance deed on it where you say, "Hey, I'm selling you this based on this criteria, though." And so the seller can put a performance deed on it. So in the title work, when you go through closing, this is filed with the county. It'll say that if the buyer, me, or in this situation, defaults on the loan, then they get the property back. Now I just cashed them out, right? 40, 50, 100,000, whatever the situation was for the purchase. Let's say, mine was around 50,000. So I just gave them, they made $50,000, right? And then if I go and default on the loan, they get the property back in their name. They can turn around and sell it for another $50,000 profit or more if the equity went up. And so it's really, really safe. Like, cause that's always the question that everybody's like, well, what if you don't make the mortgage payment? It's like, that's literally the best case scenario for the seller is if this guy comes on, gives you a bunch of cash to pass you out of your equity, defaults on the loan, and then you get it back. Maybe he's paid off the loan for 5 years and then defaults. Now you have 5 years of equity, 5 years, you have the cash up front, and then and then you get the property back. And if they don't, and if they always pay it on time and everything's perfect, then great, right? And so it's like, well, if he defaults, it's going to hurt your credit. That usually takes a few months to even show up on your credit. You're going to know it's defaulted. You would have filed, got the property back, turn around and sell it and cash out that thing. You don't even have to worry about it. And it would pop back really, really fast. And so I would do it. If I was having a hard time selling a property and wanted above asking equity, I would have no problem selling it subject to. And then if they default on it, I get the property back and I kept all their cash. Like, that's great. So it's really secure position. Like, you're really in a safe spot as the seller if you put a performance deed on it and you got some money up front.
Yeah. It even makes you think about like some different properties that I own right now. I'm just like, like maybe there is a scenario for this. So I think that was an amazing just deep dive on that. I think it answered a ton of questions that people probably have had on the subject. And if they still have more, you guys can reach out and we'll be happy to answer them the best we can. Joe, I just want you to touch on like how you found that property really quick because I think that's important.
Yeah, and then I want to ask you a little bit about the home you just purchased as well, because you just finished this amazing, beautiful, 3-unit in Maui. Like, I went and stayed in it, and like, you guys, you don't go small. You decked it out as like this beautiful, perfect home. And then the moment it was done, you like moved into this like tiny little 2-bedroom, and I'm like, wait, what a second. You're like moving to a smaller place. Like, what is going on? You barely got to enjoy that one. So I want to dive into why in the world you would do that. But to answer your question, what was your question again?
How'd you find it? How'd you
Oh,
find it? Or if
so
people are
I
listening and
literally,
they want to go find these deals, or like, I want to do a subject to, like, how did you find this one?
yeah. So for me, I literally just got on Zillow and just called a bunch of for sale by owners in my area. And I'll tell you like kind of the script or the
Yeah,
tactic,
that was my
whatever.
next question. Yeah, let's hear the sales pitch.
In the past, I would ask, just on Facebook Messenger, on Zillow, wherever, or ask their agent, like, hey, would they be open to seller financing or subject to or something? And the answer is always no. When I ask that, that's been my experience. It's just like, no, we just want to get cashed out, right? And one, they don't realize they're going to get cash out of their equity either way. They don't know that. So, but anyway, they always just say no. So I changed my approach. And so I reached out to these people. I said, hey, I just want to come see the house I'm interested in. Nothing unique or special about it. So I go out, I have a site, and these are for sale by owners. So I'm usually meeting with the owner, which is cool. And so I walk the property, and I went with my kids. I was looking at a home for me and my two kids to live in. And you become a human to them. They're a human to you. And you're like, this is beautiful. I would love to live here. And then I bring up this conversation of, man, it sucks how high interest rates are right now, right? And they're just like, yeah. I'm like, you're probably having a hard time selling this because of that. They're like, yeah, it's definitely not like it was before, when things were moving fast. I'm like, yeah, even if I bought this at full price, my mortgage would be $1,500 more than your current mortgage without you making a penny more. I just am spending way more because of interest rates. They're like, yeah, that sucks. I'm like, if there was a way where we could leave the existing loan on there, but still get you paid out of every dollar of equity you have in it, would you guys be cool with that? And they're automatically like, well, as long as we get everything we needed out of it, like, I don't know, like, and then that goes that conversation. Well, how does that work? Like, I mean, I guess we'd be open to it. Every single person I brought that up to was open to it. And then you got to learn their loan details. Is it paid off? What's their interest rate? Is it even worth doing? Then you got to get their loan terms to see. But that was the conversation. It was just like, you become a human to them and just ask them about if they'd be open to it. But once they've met in person and it's real, especially if you're buying for yourself, I think they're a lot more open than buying for an investor, or selling to an investor. But they like, everybody I talked to about that was super open, and some had too much equity, and some wanted terms I didn't agree with, and this one was perfect.
Yeah, I love that, dude. Just a numbers game, and just a numbers game. You just kind of do it, and you find out the ones that work and the ones that don't. And if you never shoot the shot, you never have a chance of it going in, right?
Yeah, it's a numbers game, but they also talk a lot how it's like it's a people game. And that was where I was missing the boat before. I'd always message all these people and everybody just says no. But as soon as I met them in person and saw them face to face and we talked about life, then we were people, and then it totally opened up a lot of doors.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, and I love just how you find like the common ground and like the common issue. Like the issue is interest rates, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the issue. Like because of that, it's causing like your prices to go down. It's causing like buyers not to be able to afford what they used to be able to afford. And it's causing like payments to be a lot higher. And like you said, it doesn't benefit the seller necessarily. And so you're kind of just cutting out the person in a way that it would benefit, to where you don't have to go get a loan for it, and the bank's making more money on those interest payments. But yeah, dude,
Yeah, and
super
and
helpful.
and you can get creative with it. What if they need $40,000 for a down payment? You can maybe give them 40,000 cash. They sell or finance the other 100,000 in equity, and then you take over the loan for the remaining 300,000 that the bank notes for. Like, you can find a solution that helps the seller and hits what numbers you need. Like, with creative financing, like, the sky really is the limit.
Yeah.
But back to you, Brody. So why in the world would you move from this beautiful home you just finished remodeling? I mean, you gutted this thing, you changed every square inch of it. There was the fires in Lahaina, and yours didn't burn down. And then you go move into another much smaller 2-bedroom home, even though you're actually in a growing family. And I'm like, okay, more kids, less bedrooms. That makes sense.
Yeah, I
But,
know, right?
why would you do that?
Yeah, dude, because that's the story of my life. Oh, just as soon as we get settled somewhere,
You did the same thing in St. George. You had your
kids.
beautiful home here and then moved to Maui into a remodel.
We did, dude. We did. Like we like just finished the pool and like just finished all the landscaping, and then it's like, oh, see ya, So, no, I think a lot of reasons for that. I mean, this one specifically, I can dive into absolutely. I think that like I've always been a visionary for the most part,
Mm-hmm.
and I just get fired up with this concept of like building your dream life and visualizing it and getting really crystal clear on what it looks like and how you live and how you wake up and just like how you feel on a daily
Mm.
basis. And if we take into account, at the end of a day, hey, was today a good day or was today a bad day? Or like majority of it is like the experiences that we had and like the way that we felt most of the time. If you were happy and inspired most of the day, then like you're like, hey, this is a happy and inspired day, which leads to a happy, inspired life. And so I'm just a huge believer in like environment is a big, big part of that. And so um I guess that's an easy way of saying like it's this balance of not always like, hey, things have to be bigger, better, bigger, better, bigger, better. But just like, am I growing and am I accomplishing these different things that I'm capable of? And, since moving to Maui, a lot of you guys know, but it was never like a permanent thing initially. We committed to 6 months and we like just kind of were mostly done with this remodel and like, let's go live out there. It'll be fun. And then we just never left because we loved it so much. And I think the only thing that has kind of been like holding me back was like, I just want some like space, and
Mm-hmm.
we have space. We like our first house is on a cul-de-sac and, it's great, really close to the beach and everything. But like you're in like, you have neighbors next to you. And so that was one thing that was always like, I miss Utah, just like being able to take my razor and like leave from the garage and you're not going to see anybody for miles, And so
Mm-hmm.
um, always obviously looking at real estate and different things. And yeah, house came up and this was like right before the fires happened. And ultimately we went under contract on it. And it was interesting because like the fire hit in between like both houses. Probably like a couple miles between each of them was like the whole span of the fire. And so,
Wow.
we had a way of getting out, getting all of our earnest money back because we weren't supposed to close for, another couple weeks on the house. And yeah, we just really like thought about it, prayed about it. We're like, are things going to tank here? Is the market going to go down? We wish we would have held off and we could have, got a way better property a year from
Sure.
now because, of everything that's happened. And yeah, dude, we felt good about it and yeah, pulled the trigger on it. So the house was definitely smaller. But it's funny because like it's on a little over an acre and it's the property. Like that's what gets me like fired up the most about it. And I'm
Yeah,
so
well,
excited about
and it's so cool because I've seen you have these sketches, these renderings of like what this home could look like,
it. Yeah.
and that's something I've seen. You obviously are a big dreamer. You always talk about that. You have this big vision, and it's like you weren't just buying the land. You weren't moving to a smaller home. Like in your brain, it's like I see you moving into what this will be. And
Yeah.
that like that's one
100%.
thing that's so cool. So many people are afraid to make moves because of what life is right now.
Mm,
And that's something I've seen you do from even starting the school to, moving to Maui to, the next place in Maui is you're not buying what it is, you're buying what it will be
mm.
once you apply your vision and create that. And you see it so clearly that to you, it's like, it's tangible. It's right there. It's like, well, no, I mean, it's not going to stay this little two bedroom. Like I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and you're breaking down all the things you're
Yeah.
going to do to it, and it's just like, oh man, like the vision that you have and the time you take to actually think about that vision makes it so real that it's doable, as
Yeah.
opposed to like, well, yeah, in a dream world that might be possible, but that's too ethereal for people to actually pull the trigger, But for you,
Yeah.
it's not, which is really cool, inspiring.
Yeah. No, thanks, man. I appreciate that. I take that as a huge compliment. So I appreciate it. I think it's like almost why I've loved like doing all these like tiny home resorts and Airbnb resorts lately, just because I get to like design it. I get to think about the vibe of it. And I'm like, if I were to come here on a retreat, what would I want the experience to be like or feel like? If I was gonna take my family here, what do I want it to be like? And then I get to go and create that is super exciting for me. But that's actually one of the reasons why like we got this house was because of the potential of it.
Mm-hmm.
And we looked at like a few different houses and even like one of them was it was quote unquote like nicer. But my wife's really good at this too, like seeing the potential. And like we always joke around about this is like nobody knows. Like nobody has any idea, right? Just because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people can't see that. And like it's like, no, we're buying this because like this property, even though there's only 2 bedrooms, like there's like a giant bonus, space back behind the garage. And like so it's like all these little things where we're like, oh yeah, we can do this with it, and like this lower section here. And we know like stuff that most people probably don't think about. And it's like, if the toss up, the price is the same, this other one's already like finished and remodeled, and which was the case in this other house. It was like, oh, maybe this is the way to go. And yeah, just being able to see that potential is why we ended up getting this house.
I love that. It's funny, and maybe this is a cheesy analogy, but I think of like if you gave an artist a finished painting or a blank canvas and or paint, they're gonna want the blank canvas and the paint. Like they don't want the finished painting, and that's the thing, dude. You're a creator, you're an artist, and it's like, no, give me the blank canvas and I'll turn it into something. Like, even though that finished painting's awesome, like, cool, someone else already did it,
Yeah. Yeah,
you
I got
know?
something bigger in store, whatever, right? It's almost like it's hey, do you want this job? It's very safe and very secure, but like this is the ceiling, right? Most people are going to choose that, as opposed to like, hey, here's another opportunity where there's no floor, but like the ceiling's unlimited, and most people still like, I want the safe, secure route. And I think it kind of relates to that. But I remembered, I've shared this a handful of times, but like I had multiple mentors in my life, but I remember specifically, and this wasn't with this house, this is a handful of years ago, but my wife and I were looking at spending more money on a house than we had like spent at that point. And so just getting their advice and picking their brain. And one of them was like, "Can you pay cash for it?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, "Okay, then like don't buy it. It's just going to stress you out." And
Mm,
the other one was like, "Can you afford it?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And so he's like, "Is it going to inspire you?" And I'm like,
mm,
1000%. And he's like, "Then do it. Like, don't think twice about it. Do it full send." And it's like, if you can wake up inspired, that is one of the biggest ROIs that you're ever going to get anywhere. And so I kind of like have taken that to heart. And I love, love, love just that concept of like, dude, am I inspired? Is my environment inspiring me? And that's why I love like the detached office setup, and like having like these things that are just like so fun, because it's like I want to be as inspired as possible, because I get that high and that fulfillment off of inspiring other people. And it's very hard to do that if I'm not living an inspired life myself. And so it's just kind of like
I
that
love that.
responsibility to be inspired as much as possible.
Dude, I love that. I've heard some phrase about that where it's like, waking up and doing the hard work for something you hate is called drudgery. But when you wake up and do the hard work for something that you love or inspired for, it's called passion. And it's like, if you wake up and do the hard work either way, but man, if you're excited about it, it's way different. It's funny, that analogy, because that's kind of when I was buying my very first car, like very first car I ever bought. I was looking at this older car that was like beat up and it was ugly, and I was like, oh, I hate that car, but it was like in my budget. And then there's this other car my friend was selling, and it was like this like convertible, and it was like so cool and stuff, and it was going to cost way more. And I was like, I would rather drive that car to work and have to have a job to pay for the payment that's higher, because I get to drive that car to work and to school and everything, than have this other one that's paid off. And I'd be more excited about that, including the job, than having this one without a job. And it's just kind of the same idea, because it's like it
Yeah.
inspired me to make me excited, which isn't normally how I approach most things. Now I kind of value my freedom a little more, but at the time that was kind of my exact same mind thought process, and it's cool to see it on such a bigger level.
Well, dude, I think there's obviously you got to be careful with this whole thing in general, because you get, and that's why I throw in there like, can you afford it?
Hmm.
And like that's an important one. Don't skip over that, because I think too many people, that it's just this is amazing advice for the right person. It's terrible advice for the wrong person. So,
Yeah,
um, but I do think that like you can get an ROI from those things, like I
100%.
okay, the house costs twice as much money, but you can still afford it. But like now your business just 10x, right? Because of different things, or like you driving that car, your confidence went through the roof, and like, like now you're recruiting all the big dogs back, whatever, right? Like there's different
Right.
ways where you can kind of like fix the game. And it comes back to like this lifestyle hacking and this lifestyle investing, and just the concept of like, how do you make decisions now that are going to benefit your life and your lifestyle in the future. And I think it's important also to point out, like, I know for a fact that you did this, and I know for a fact that I did this, but after years and years and years of doing the things that I should do, even though I didn't have to, it's allowed me and you to do things that we want to do, even though we don't have to. And I think that like just making those like disciplined decisions early on, and I remember even just back to like the first house that my wife and I bought together, it was like it was hard. We had some tough conversations because our friends that were making the same amount of money as us, if not less money than us, they were all building like these nice, beautiful homes, and we're like, hey, this is part of our plan. Like this is part of the vision. Like let's just hang on to this thing, because if we can grind it out, and house hack hop this whatever one or two more times, like we're gonna have that dream home that's paid for. And so that for sure has paved the way and paved the foundation. And I think it's easy to look at a lot of people's lives and like, oh yeah, cool. Like, yeah, it's easy to live somewhere that inspires you. Like when you have money, like great, that's easier said than done. But you also have to realize like, no, this is intentionally planned. And like these things have been written down like for years and years and years and years and years, and it's funny because I was with my wife doing this training for some people that she coaches, and we were just talking about like our daily and weekly routines and goal setting and whatnot a little bit. So I was walking everybody through like the process that I use. And I was talking about like writing down my goals, and I just picked up my notebook and I was just like, hey, I've been doing this for 8+ years, and I just flipped to a random page, and I was just looking at it, and someone was like, oh, the reason I flipped to it is they were like, hey, can you read us some of your goals? So I flipped to one, and it was just funny. The first thing was on there was to have an acre plus of land in Maui, which is just like with ocean views, and so it's like, I don't know, that was way before I got this property on contract, way before I really started looking, but there's just so much power in like getting so clear on that. And like, that's why you build, that's why you work, that's why you grind. Like, and if you lose sight of that vision and you don't have that clarity on what that looks like, it's really difficult to go and build it and go and live it.
100%. And it's so cool when you have that clarity and that vision. And we kind of end up here. I know we're about to an hour, but it's just that whole analogy of like the red car. It's like, how many red cars did you pass driving to work today or whatever? It's like, I don't know, but if you mention it tomorrow, I'll have an exact count because you're looking for it. And if you had never thought, I'm looking for this specific thing, how are you going to find it? And what, from my brother's deal, him getting into that condo right by his kids and his price point, if he hadn't put those exact buy box, that vision out there, I wouldn't have found it. Which means he wouldn't have found it. You know what I mean? And you're doing the same thing, and it doesn't matter. Like, I want everybody to listen, like, whether you're buying, ranches and acreage and the islands, or whether you're buying a condo downtown, like, it doesn't matter what situation you're at. Look at what inspires you, look at what you can do, see what your criterias are. And then like, once you have that pinpointed, it is crazy how fast you will find what you're looking for, if you know what you're looking for and you're actually serious about it. And then you got to have the guts to pull the trigger. And it's always a little scary. It was scary for my brother to do that. I'd never even done a subject to, and I helped him do that one. And we messed up on a lot of pieces. There was things we didn't know, and it had happened so fast that, we weren't able to get all the pieces in line. And, we're picking up the pieces, and it's still totally worth it. And then I wasn't quite ready to buy this one. Like, I was still pretty comfortable where I was at, but I was like, okay, here, let's do it. And I still had to learn a ton, and I learned a ton through the process. And, and you, like I said, you just finished your other home, and you're just getting back after the fires and travel and all this stuff. And you got to have the guts to actually go for it when the universe gives you what you're asking. It's still sometimes scary to jump,
Totally, man. Yeah, totally. And it's like, how do you put, like my little girl said literally yesterday, was like, I never want to like leave this house, and it's like, how do you put a price tag on that? You know, like that makes you want to go grind, makes you want to go work, makes you want to go build for something. And my wife and I have talked about it multiple times, just like we have no idea how much we would actually love this. And I think everything you said is spot on. But kind of in closing, dude, wrapping this thing up, what's your episode number 100? What's your biggest advice to somebody right now that's on the path to financial freedom? How do you want to close this thing out? What do you want to say to everybody?
Deal 100. Well, I guess I'll think of it as a kind of a common phrase, but we overestimate what we can do in a year, and we underestimate what we can do in 5. And I would just say that, like, to me, it's like, wow, we already did a 100 episodes of this, and I just think people, we kind of sometimes sell ourselves short. So don't necessarily worry about the time frame. I heard this quote that said, don't worry about how long it takes to accomplish a goal. The time will pass either way. And so it's like, set that vision, set that intention, and it might actually happen a lot quicker than you think. So that's another reason not to worry about the time frame. Whether it's going to happen in 1 year or 5 years, just go for it. It might happen faster, it might happen shorter, but set that intention and just go for it.
Love it, dude. That's golden. Great place to end. Thank you guys for tuning in. This is a little bit longer of a real deal episode, but hope you learned a lot. Thanks for joining us. As always, leave us a good review if you got value out of this thing, and ultimately we will catch you on the next one.